Welcome back. In this show we're going to add some highlights to the 3 trees we drew, and we're going to add an island here. We're going to mix some colors. We're not going to worry about any new brushes this time though, so it should be fairly easy. Let's start by mixing up a color to add highlights to our tree, similar to what Bobby does. We're going to have our tree brush here, and we're going to take the color we created to make our trees. If you've reopened your document, or if you no longer have this green, we can right click, and in our color history it'll have some of the colors we were using, and it's probably one of these really dark greens here. That looks like the color. If you've lost your color history or you're not sure which one is, you can always use the color picker. So for the highlights, Bobby added a little bit of cadmium yellow and he added some yellow ochre. So let's do that. Let's add some cadmium yellow to our mixer, and I don't have my colors there, so I'm gonna hit that, and now I'm gonna go pick some yellow ochre, which is kind of this yellow ochre-y color. I don't want to add much. We can always add more after. I'm gonna bring that right up here, and I'm gonna bring this one right up here too. Let's say about 25% or so. Try that and we'll see what happens. So our foreground color, we're gonna mix about 25% of this cadmium yellow. I hit that, it becomes my new foreground color, and now I'm going to add about 25% of the yellow ochre. No, I'm going to add less. I'm going to add something like that. And I have a highlight color. I may actually want to add some more sap green, depending on what color you're going for, and I'm actually going to add a little bit. I'm going to add a little bit, 25% more sap green. Looks good to me. Let's go for it. We've got our color, our highlight color, and really we're just going to draw another little tree over top of this, and I'm just going to draw some highlights. So this can be way more sparse than before, and again I'm going to slowly make my brush a little bit bigger as I go down. Not too big. Once you start getting big at the bottom, it gets big really fast, so you don't need to add much after that. Let's go back small again. If you've been playing around with the brush engine at all, you may have thought of more creative methods of having this brush get bigger, and we're going to use one of those methods with our better brush. This looks decent. Let's add an island. Okay, so we could, with our own hands, copy what Bobby does and draw some reflections here, and then use some smudge brushes and blend them a little bit and then push them to get a little waviness going in the water. However, this is an analog to digital conversion, and I'm going to take this opportunity as an excuse to show you a few new tools we haven't looked at yet. Before we do though, I'm going to take better advantage of our layout here. So we have a mostly vertical canvas, and we're wasting all this space. Even when I'm zoomed in, I'm not completely zoomed in because we're not working in the highest resolution here. So I want to use some more of the space over here, and things are getting a little crowded over here. I wouldn't mind more room for the overview docker so it could max out its size here. And I can't even see my whole palette. So why don't we take some of these dockers and move them over here. I'm going to grab the overview docker. I'm going to grab it by its handlebar. You can hit its title, or you can hit that little grid beside on either side of the title, and I'm going to drag it over here. Let's see if we can fit it in here somewhere. There we go. I see the white outline where it's going to go. There's my overview docker. And I'm going to take some more of this room here. There, now I can see the whole thing. My digital colors mixer, I'm going to move over top of the layers, brush presets, and tool options. And I have this brush presets here. We don't need that. We have the brush presets up here we can use. That'll work fine. Now we'll give this more room. We can see way more layers. That's alright. And tool options, which I haven't discussed yet, but will give us more room to look at these, which we're going to do. We're going to start using. Now let's recenter this. I'm going to hit 3 on the number pad so it fits to width. I'm going to hit the minus key once. Ooh, that's a nice fit. We still have a lot of room here we could use for other stuff. If you explore some of the other dockers and you find things you like, we've got a lot of room here for them. You could tab something with the overview, so you could have multiple dockers here with tabs similar to how we have over here. Lots of room for us to work with. And remember, we can always just hit tab if we just want to work in canvas only mode. So let's start with a few things on the layers Docker. Now that I can see the whole list of my layers, you can see all of those mountains that I created. I don't need to see all of those mountains, but I don't want to delete those layers either. So what I can do is I can create a layer group. And a layer group is like a folder that you store a whole bunch of layers in. And you can actually do modifications on the layer group that will affect everything inside it. We're not going to worry about that for now. Right now, I just want to create a folder for these layers. So I'm going to click on my top mountains layer, and down here under the plus symbol, before we've just been hitting plus, and that's been creating by default for us a special kind of layer called a paint layer. Now I want to create a group layer. You can see the icon has a little folder here, and it's empty, so I'm going to click the mountains, and I'm going to drag it into the layer 17 here. I'm going to double click that. I'm going to rename it mountains, and I'm going to click and drag all of my mountains into that mountain layer. If you find clicking and dragging too tedious, you can just click the layer below the layer group and hit this little folder with the right arrow, and it will shift it right into the folder, into the layer group. Now you notice this little collapse symbol here, the little minus sign. If I do that, it'll collapse that whole folder with all the mountains in it. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to move that into the layer. I'm going to move that one in and that one in. Now I'm going to collapse them all. And you'll notice nothing actually changed in here. This looks the same. If I hit the visibility icon on the layer group, everything inside that group will disappear. We could add a foothills group if we want to. Actually, you know what? Why don't we do that? I mentioned you can manipulate a layer group and it will actually affect all of the layers. So if I click the expand icon there, I can see all 3 foothills within this layer group. Before, if I wanted to shift my foothills, for example, I'd have to do each of them individually. But now I can just select the foothills layer group. I can change the move tool with the T key, and now I can change all of these layers together, which I don't want to do. I'm going to undo that. But you can see the effect you have. You could also change the opacity of the entire group, which I also don't want to do. But you get the idea. It also cleans things up quite a bit. So we have our evergreens, and we want to mirror them. We want to mirror them, we want to blur them a bit, and we want to create a little ripple effect. And we're going to do that without painting a single stroke. The first adjustment I want to make is I actually want to shrink this set of trees. If you see in the overview document, this is actually a large area of our painting. I want to move it to the left some because we're going to be framing our painting in some large deciduous trees and we're going to lose half of it. And as well, I want to move it down further away from the back. But before I do any of those transformations, I'm going to make a copy of this layer. And the reason I'm doing that is because if I, at some point, want to go back to my original version of these evergreen trees, I'll have a copy of it. It's going to be pretty hard later on in my painting. I do have 100 undo steps, but I don't want to lose all that work. And painting little short brushstrokes can easily add up to 100 steps. So I am going to duplicate this layer, which you can do many ways. You can right-click on the layer once it's selected, and you can choose Duplicate Layer. You can hit the Control-J key to duplicate the layer, or you can hit the Duplicate Layer icon. Whatever floats your boat. The layer below it is going to be my backup layer. I can even rename it. Evergreens, I'm just going to say it BU for backup. I'm going to hit this eye icon so that the backup layer is invisible, and we're going to be working with our new layer above it, Evergreens layer. That's probably good for this video. Thanks for joining me. See you next time.